So in our introductory video, we talked about all of the cool stuff that streamers do with their video feeds in particular, and the ways in which they can configure a video feed to do a whole bunch of stuff that goes beyond just what Zoom can do. And the magic that makes that work is OBS. There are a few other options too, but OBS is by far the most common, and OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software. And basically OBS is a free open source program that allows you to sort of configure a video feed the way that you want. And I'm going to show you guys a little bit about how to use that today. But first, there is a problem. And the problem is, well, there's this famous Reddit thread. Somebody asked on Reddit a question about people's tattoos. What tattoos do you have and what do they mean? And so a guy started off in the thread by posting this picture of the tattoos he had on his wrists. And very quickly, nobody cared about the tattoos anymore because immediately somebody asked, well, how did you take that picture? So the guy posted this. And of course, the obvious question was, how did you take that picture? Finally, somebody in the comments had the good sense to suggest a mirror. And so the final picture captures the final picture. All of our questions are answered. We have the picture of the picture of the picture of the picture of the tattoos. Recording OBS is a little bit like that because by default, if I'm sharing my screen with you guys and I'm recording the app that I'm using to share my screen, what we end up with really quickly is like OBS Inception. So I'm going to use a secondary program to record this. And that way, hopefully, we can see how OBS works without having it be too glaring into the infinite forever. So first, where do we get OBS? obsproject.com. As I said, it is free, open source, and cross-platform. So I'm going to assume that you guys can figure out how to download and install a program. But this is where you get it. When you first set it up, it'll look like this. Let me give you a quick tour of this interface before I start showing you what we can do with it. In the center here is our canvas. This is what our video feed is going to look like when we're all done with it. In the lower left, we have our list of scenes. Right now, we only have one, but we can add as many as we want to do whatever we want. Each scene represents a configuration of stuff on screen. Our sources are the things that go in the scene, right? So we'll start off, I'm going to rename this scene to desktop. So let's go ahead and add something to this scene. We'll start with just a desktop. Let's say we wanted to share our desktop. If I want to share exactly what's on my screen, I can go to display capture. You can name it whatever you like. Here we've got infinity, so I'm going to switch over to my second display. And there we have it. You can see my second monitor is going to be what I stream. So there's two ways to configure something that goes in your sources. One of them is by right-clicking here or clicking on the wrench and bringing up properties. That lets you fiddle with the settings for the specific thing that you're putting on your screen. The second way is by manipulating the canvas itself or the item on the canvas. So because this is too big, I can scale it down by dragging the handles and moving it around. Or I can also say, transform fit to screen. And the aspect ratio on my second monitor is a little bit different than my video feed. So I've got these black bars at the side, but that's cool. So there's my first scene, and I'm going to move over to my second monitor. And there it is. So far, all we've done is a simple screen share. But let's say we wanted to do something different. Let's say we also wanted to be able to switch back and forth between our screen share and our webcam. That is pretty easy to do too. We make a new scene rather. Everything's gone black because we've created a blank canvas for ourselves. We can still switch back to desktop, and desktop looks just the same way that it did before. But if I switch to webcam, I can put different stuff on here. I'm going to click on Add, Video Capture Device. I'm going to name it USB Webcam. I can choose which webcam I'm going to use. I actually have two because I have one on my laptop and then one plugged into my computer. I'm going to say USB camera, which is the same thing that you're looking at in the corner of the screen, I hope.
Because of the screen recording inception, there are too many cameras on the screen right now. The one I'm highlighting is from the recording software I'm using to capture me working with OBS. I'm going to get rid of that now, so that from here on out, the cameras that you'll see are just the ones in OBS.
You can set it to use different quality settings depending on what you're wanting to do. And there's my camera. And I can switch back and forth between these scenes. And when I switch back and forth, it's not just switching what is on my screen. It's also switching what is being output to the video. Both of these are pretty basic. So let me show you a couple of other things that you can do. I'm going to add another scene. And I'm going to put the same stuff that I have already put together. I'm going to use a display capture, and I can add existing since I already have it set up. There's my secondary display. I'm going to make sure that it fits properly on the screen again. And I'm also going to add the video capture device that we just made, which is my webcam. Now, both of those things are in the same scene, and I can resize myself and put myself right there in the corner. So now I have my desktop with my camera overlaid on top of it. So basically what we have now is a screen share and a webcam, which is not all that different from what you can do with Zoom. But let me show you some other stuff that you can do to fiddle around with things. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to shrink down my desktop a little bit because we've got those bars, and if I make this even a little bit smaller, we'll give ourselves a little bit of space on the side or underneath that we could figure out what to do with a little bit later. Move my webcam up here. And now we have some extra space to play with. So in addition to things like cameras and screens, we can also use OBS to put other stuff in our feed. So under sources, I'm going to click add. And I'm going to add a window capture. A window capture lets you capture not just your whole screen, but a specific window. We'll call it checklist. And I put together a little checklist of stuff that I wanted to do in this video. You can see it's a little bit big. So we'll shrink it down here. And there we have it. Now you'll notice this window is not on my shared screen. In fact, no, that's the wrong app. This window is sitting over here. Excuse me. This window is on the same desktop as OBS, but if I make changes to it, checking off the things we've already done, for example, those show up now in my video feed. Stuff we've already done. Look at that. We're almost done. Doesn't matter whether or not the that application window is visible. It could be hidden. It could be minimized. As long as it's there, as long as that window is open, it'll show up on the feed right here. I'm going to shrink that window a little bit so that we can have the space below it. For the next thing that I want to show you, adding a website. If I click on my sources here, you'll also see that there's an option for browser. And that does exactly what you might expect. It adds a little web browser in your feed. Once I create it, I can give it a URL. And there's all kinds of stuff that you can do with this. You can use custom CSS. Most of this you don't really need. But the URL is the website that you want to add, obviously. When I push OK, I'm going to get Twitter. Because what more do we need in a class than the tweet announcing that they're reopening Disney parks? So if you are the same kind of geek as me, you can use all kinds of stuff for this. Anything that can go in a website can go there. If you have a particular YouTube video that you want to replay over and over for some reason, why am I suggesting that? That's a horrible idea. Don't do that. Anything that's on the web can go in there. So we can use websites, we can use browsers. Let's check off our website on our list. We also currently in our setup don't have audio, and that's usually a problem. So if I click on the plus here, I can say audio input capture and add that source. You can choose from all of the input sources on your mic, on your system. This is the microphone I'm using right now. So if I choose that, you'll now see my little audio show up down here in the mixer, which means that that is now a part of this feed. If I click on this little mute button there, that'll mute it. I can adjust my volume levels. If I want to be really fancy, I can add filters by clicking on that and then going to filters. I am not that fancy, so I'm not going to do that. But if you're more of an audiophile than me, you can. And the beautiful thing about this is that this stuff is still here. If I want to go just to my desktop, I can go just to my desktop. If I want to go back to my screen that I've set up, I can do that. And I can switch between these easily. So the last thing that I want to show you guys here is how to use this with Zoom. Because the nice thing about the technologies that I'm showing you is that they all kind of work together, or at least can work together. And so even though I think this is a much more fancy way of doing things than using Zoom, if you want to use this in a setting like Zoom, you absolutely can. And the way to do that is just to click Start Virtual Camera. What Start Virtual Camera does is it takes your OBS scene that you've just put together, this feed that you've laid out, and it tells your computer that this is a webcam. So now in Zoom, I could choose OBS Virtual Camera, and what would show up as my webcam, like as myself, is this whole screen share, this whole thing that I've set up. So I'm betting by the time this is all said and done, this video is probably going to be about 10 minutes long, and I've shown you the basics of how to get this set up. It's not that difficult a tool to use. There's also some excellent documentation that I'll make sure that I link in the descriptions. It's just a really cool tool that you can use with lots of different stuff. You can use this to record if you want to record to your laptop or to your computer and then upload it to Zoom. You can use this to stream if you want to stream to Twitch or to some other service. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do with this. What OBS basically does is it lets you control how your video feed looks. And anything you can do with the video feed, you can do with the output from OBS. Cool. I hope this was helpful. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions. I'd be more than happy to show you some more specific stuff.